Okay, so I kind of covered these examples out of order. I should have done this a little bit differently, but it covers the same content. This is just an easier thing to understand through a video rather than the graphing, because you need me to kind of help explain things different ways to do graphing. So this is the video for just finding measures using mid-segments. So just another quick definition, recap of triangle mid-segment theorem, or the triangle mid-segments. The segment connecting the midpoints of two sides of a triangle is parallel to the third side and half as long as that side. So, using just DE as an example, DE is a mid-segment because it connects the midpoints. Okay? It connects the midpoints of AB and BC. The main properties of DE is that it's parallel, parallel to its corresponding side, and it's half the length of its corresponding side. We talked about that in example 1 more, but you're going to do example 1 later, so it's a little out of order. But you still should be able to kind of understand what I'm talking about in example 2, because we're going to talk about, it looks more complex than it is, but it's a triangular shape that we use in roof trusses to help strengthen them. So in this diagram, UV and VW are mid-segments of RST. Find the length of UV, find the length of RS. So UV has a couple properties. In that triangle, RST, UV is parallel to RT. Okay, that's not as important when finding a measure, but I still want us to know that that's parallel to RT because it corresponds to RT. Now, UV is also 1/2 the length of RT. Okay, that's what's helpful because we know RT is 90. So we know UV is 1/2 of 90, which makes UV 45 inches. So UV equals 45 inches. So a little less than 4 feet. So that should kind of make sense in a roof, 4 foot length, a little less than a 4 foot length. Okay, so that's the first distance we're finding, or first length we're finding. The second length we're finding is RS. So RS is this length right here. The mid-segment that's parallel to RS is VW. So VW is, not equal to, it's parallel to RS. VW is also 1/2 of RS. So knowing that VW is 57, if that's half of RS, the way I would find RS is really 2 times VW then, right? If VW is half of RS, RS is 2 times VW. So RS is really 2 times 57, which is 114. So RS equals 114 inches, which is a little less than 10 feet. So that kind of makes sense in the context of a roof. So just understanding the mid-segment is half. The side that's parallel to the mid-segment is twice the length of that mid-segment. So we're going to get another example of that in example 3 of finding measures and just understanding whether it's half or whether it's double. So the directions are kind of complex, but as long as you follow along to when I'm drawing my path here, you'll kind of see what's going on. So it's going to seem like a lot going on, but it's simpler than it seems. It says that Pear Street intersects Cherry Street and Peach Street at their midpoints. So Pear Street is a mid-segment. Your home is at point P at the top right of that triangle, top right vertex of that triangle. You leave your home and you run down Cherry Street to Plum Street, over Plum Street to Peach Street, up Peach Street to Pear Street, over Pear Street to Cherry Street, and then back home up Cherry Street. About how many miles do you jog? So we're going to have kind of a running total here. And I'm going to try and use a color that stands out. So I think I'll use red. So we start at home. So you're going for a run. You're starting at this point at home. You jog down Cherry Street to Plum Street. So Cherry to Plum. So you're going this whole distance. So it's understanding that whole distance is 1.3 twice, because Pear Street is a mid-segment. So you're running down that entire length of Cherry Street 2.6 miles. Okay, 2.6 miles. At that point, you run from Plum Street to Peach Street. So I ran this length and then Plum to Peach. So this distance. So I ran another 1.4 miles. And I'm not going to add these up till the end. Okay? Okay, so this is where it gets a little more complex. I'll change this to blue at this point just to keep track of where we are. Peach to Pear Street. So from Peach to Pear Street. So I only went halfway. Okay? So instead of going the full 2.25 miles, I went 1.125 miles, half of 2.25. Then I went over Pear to Cherry Street, which Pear Street, understanding Pear Street is half of the side it's parallel to. So Pear Street is really 0.7 miles. So I ran another 0.7 miles. And then I went back up home on Cherry Street. So that last little segment I ran was 1.3 miles. Okay? So if I'm totaling this up, I'm just going to use my calculator, and that's going to be 7.125 miles. So if you're saying about how many miles did you jog? You jogged about 7 miles. So mostly about this, it's just following directions and tracing your steps so you understand what's going on. So this question, it's not overly complex. It just sounds complex because it's a little bit longer, okay? So you should be ready to move on to some practice finding measures. There may be some equations in there. If those don't make sense, we will cover those when we're in person. You can ask those questions when we're in person.